Well, I'm afraid compared with Vince and Simon and John, who I guess between them I've been trying to work out have about a century of experience of ODI, I am a sort of a newcomer interloper, because I was not involved in the ODI at all till about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago maybe, when Simon and I had breakfast. And Simon's attempt then, which turned out to be successful, was to persuade me to become chair of ODI. And the reason why I decided to put my name forward to do that was that Simon managed to enthuse me with the way that ODI was addressing some of the most fundamental questions which we face in the world today. Now, I always knew those were the fundamental questions because I've always been fascinated by applied economics. I know that isn't everybody's cup of tea. I mean, it's a bit sad, really. You say, what turns you on? Applied economics, you're a bit odd. But I've been fascinated by what makes societies tick, and that is why I had migrated to, in my consulting, my private consulting work, work in the transition of Eastern Europe and Russia in the early 90s, because it was a fascinating intellectual challenge of how you transition from a communist economy to a market economy. I've done work in the UK on our pensions policy, on minimum wage. So I've always been interested in the issues of public policy as well as the issues of business. But I've also had an increasing feeling that although the concerns of the rich developed world, which is where we live, are important to many people in them. We have to think about the balance of our society. We have to govern these societies well, and there is poverty and lack of opportunity in our countries. Actually, these problems are relatively minor with the fundamental point of view, which is, can we get all of humanity to make the breakthrough which our societies have made over the last 200 years, from essentially millennium of grinding poverty, because that was the fate of the vast majority of humanity in all societies before 1800, to a level where we actually have quite a challenge of working out what to do with a society where growth in income doesn't matter all that much, and it doesn't make people happier. Well, there's a lot of places in the world where growth of income and making that breakthrough does make people happier. And what is startling is that some countries have achieved it and some haven't. In 1950, the GDP per capita of the Congo and of South Korea were roughly the same. And one of them soared and one of them didn't. And I think the question of why that has occurred and how we get a breakthrough to sustained growth and prosperity, and make sure that that prosperity is enjoyed by everybody in the developing world, is one of the great challenges. And so when they were issues that had always fascinated me, but when Simon described to me the organisation which he was then running, which was making a major contribution to thinking through all those issues, I was persuaded to be the chair. Now, unfortunately, I'm now a complete failure, because 2 years later I'm going to have to give up the chair. But I do have a defence. I was appointed chairman of the FSA on September the 20th, 2008. This was rather equivalent to somebody saying that I could take over a boat. It's okay, Adair, you can take over now, and not telling me that we were 200 metres from the top of Niagara Falls. Because in the next 3 weeks, the world financial system fundamentally collapsed. And I realised fairly soon thereafter that I really just had to shed as many things as possible from my agenda, because there was just too much to do. But I also realised that we were in the process of losing Simon. That had been fixed. And so the one thing I did say, and the one thing I can say that I have done on behalf of the ODI, is that I would work us through to have a successor for Simon, and therefore that I would go through the process of the selection of Alison as it was, to make sure that the organisation continued to be in good hands. And I'm very pleased to say that we did do that successfully. I think, as Simon has said and others have said, I think Alison has proved a fantastic leader of the ODI in this first year. I am now stepping down from chair of the ODI. We are close to completing the process and We will get round to an announcement shortly of a replacement. So I'm still chairman for a few days. Don't think you can, just ignore me for that. But we are there, and I will then have completed my, admittedly, 2 years compared with this century or so of extraordinary experience. So that said, can I hand over to Alison to talk about the work she's been doing with the ODI in her first year as director and the future as it looks forward to the next 50 years. Thank you.